Let's take a little bit of time to familiarize ourselves with the back of the Express console, where all the connections need to be made. After all, you have to make sure it's plugged in and that your monitor is hooked up and that your data signal is connected to your dimmers before you can begin working on your console. So let's take a look at some of the critical connections on the back of the desk. The first one, and the most obvious, is connecting the power. Express console comes with a power supply, and there are one of two types of connectors. It will look something like this, and typically there is a label right here on the console that says power input. You just want to make sure that you take your console connector and plug it in, and then after that you can plug in the power supply to the wall, but make this connection first and make sure the power switch is turned off. The second connection you're going to want to make is, it's labeled right here, CRT Display. It's a standard VGA connection. Looks like something like this, a standard computer cable. And that just plugs right into the area that says CRT Display. And the other end of this cable, of course, would go to a monitor. And last but not least, you actually have to have a data connection connected to your console. The Express console actually uses the DMX 512 standard. It's a digital protocol to talk to your dimmers, and that is signified by a 5-pin XLR type connector. There are two places to plug in your DMX on the back of the console, where it's labeled DMX 512. One of them says 1 through 512, one of them says 513 through 1024. In most cases, you're going to want to plug your DMX into the one that says 1 through 512, because again, that is up to 512 dimmers. So I think that the second port is typically used for automated fixtures or other types of things. Other connections on the back of the console that you may want to be aware of. Remote focus unit here is signified by RFU, that is short for remote focus unit. If you have a handheld remote focus unit, that's where it would plug in. etclink, this is a connection that connects for dimmer information, and that if your theater has ETC dimmers, it will connect to the etclink port right there. It's a 6-pin connector, so it can't be plugged into the DMX port accidentally. Below the DMX ports are your MIDI ports. If you're using MIDI on your console, that's where they would plug in. Next to that is going to be your ETC net connection. Typically, you will use the one labeled twisted pair. That's a standard, like an Ethernet connection like you'd find on your computer. And then also along the bottom row next to your video display are connections for a printer and a connector that's labeled remote macro, and that is basically for contact closures. But essentially what we have is power, your video display, and your DMX signal. Once you have those three basic connections made, you're ready to turn your console on and begin using it. So plug your power connection into the wall at the other end, and when you're set, you can flip the power switch on, and there's a blue light here on the front of the desk that will indicate that you have power to your desk, and after a little bit it will boot up and you'll be ready to go. So that is the basics of making all of the connections on your Express console.